on with part 2 of my Black History Month book review or book offering. Not really doing reviews, but offerings and things to add to our list as we honor Black authors during Black History Month. And let's see, I left off, I left off talking about Malcolm, but before that, I mentioned Afrofuturism and my scholar friend, Roger Sneed, and his book, Afrofuturism and Black Religious Thought. And I was defining, at least reading his definition of Afrofuturism, in which Black people, engage with speculative fiction, fantasy, horror, and that kind of thing. And so it led me to also think of another classic, because I gave some examples. Um, but also this book, Beloved, by Toni Morrison, y'all, of course. This I don't know how it's got to be such a small paperback, because if you read the hardback, it's like so thick. But so many of you probably read Beloved before or have seen the movie, right? Oprah did the movie, of course, she did. And I just wanted to mention Beloved because, it's not brand new anymore. And our beloved Toni Morrison has gone on to be one of the ancestors at this point. But, she left us a whole, just a rich legacy. So originally published in 1987. But y'all, it's a ghost story, right? And so if you have not seen or read Beloved, uh, please know, well, first of all, you should, how you're not reading Toni Morrison. But it is a ghost story, so it would fit under this rubric called Afrofuturism, in which Black people are exploring Black life outside the usual confines of, what is expected, but how do Black people engage with the supernatural, or what does it mean in the case of this story to experience oneself in communication with a ghost, a non-physical entity? I don't know. What are you going to call it? Write in the comments. What do you call Beloved? Is she a ghost? Well, I mean, I guess it's kind of clear. Is she the ghost of the baby that Setha had? Um, I mean, some people have even theorized that the ghost is really Setha's own, her own conscious, her own, something that's going on within her that is not actually a ghost. So speculative fiction, right? Like, so what do we speculate happens in the afterlife? What do we imagine there is, and all like that? And so I think that has some similarities to what I focus on here on this channel when I talk about magic and hoodoo and conjure, because we are engaging, specifically and intentionally engaging non-physical entities and energy. Okay, and so also kind of along that line is Zora Neale Hurston's book, Tell My Horse. Now, Zora, again, it's like you can't go wrong when you talk about Toni Morrison or Zora Neale Hurston. These are our great, great literary heroes, and Baldwin, and so many others, but our literary heroes. And so again, I take this opportunity during Black History Month to just highlight our people. And so this particular one, though, I mean, probably their eyes were watching God. As I always tell my students, look, there's a couple things that you got to read in this life. And one is Their Eyes Were Watching God, and the other is the autobiography of Malcolm X. And I should have said that in the last video when I was talking about Malcolm. So absolutely, the autobiography of Malcolm X. So this one, though, is not a novel. Their Eyes Were Watching God was a novel. Jonas Gordvine, a novel. This is a almost academic sort of memoir-ish about her experiences, her own experiences with voodoo and life in Haiti and Jamaica. So the subtitle is actually Voodoo and Life in Haiti and Jamaica. And so these are kind of like her field notes where she's taking us with her. Like this says, during the 1930s, Tell My Horse is a fascinating firsthand account of the mysteries of voodoo. right? That's not really the right word. Vodun, we would say, right? An invaluable resource and remarkable guide to voodoo practices, rituals, and beliefs. It is a travelogue. That's a great word. A travelogue into a dark, mystical world that offers a vividly authentic picture of ceremonies, customs, and superstitions. So, whoever really wrote this, their language is not the best in describing African-based religions because they're talking about superstitions and voodoo. But aside from that, the actual travelogue, the actual detailing of accounts is, it's a valuable resource. And, perhaps you didn't know that Zora Neale Hurston was also an anthropologist. In addition to being a writer, she was also an anthropologist who studied at Barnard College under the person who was considered the father of American anthropology, Franz Boas. And so that means that she's very well trained in the field of anthropology. And she was always going and doing research trips in Florida and her home state, her home community. She wanted to tell the stories of Black people. She wanted Black people to be represented in all kinds of ways, right? So she wasn't going to shy away from using the vernacular as she did in Their Eyes Were Watching God. She wanted to say, this is the way Black people live, and it's just as beautiful and valuable as anything else. And we don't have to try to, assimilate or play politics of respectability, right? We can just be ourselves. And Zora was a great writer and creative person who was really trying to share that with the world, and in some cases having to convince others of her own generation, others during the Harlem Renaissance, that there's value in writing in the vernacular and letting Black people's voices speak the way they are on the page, and not trying to translate it to make it easier for white people to read, or for bougie Black people to say, oh no, we don't want to read that in the vernacular. So again, I just offer this as an example of her actual more academic work, or memoir, travelogue, folklore, and documenting what she found in Haiti and Jamaica. And lastly, speaking about the Harlem Renaissance, this biography here, okay, it's a big old book. Let's straighten with it a little bit. I don't know if I've shown y'all this before. Maybe I have because I love it so much. The New Negro, the Life of Alan Locke, written by Jeffrey Stewart, another scholar friend of mine who is at the University of California, Santa Barbara. Oh, I was just looking at the back of this. I got all kind of notes written on, like literally in the back of the book. I have written on the book because it's such an amazing work. And I asked Jeffrey Stewart how long it took him to write this book. And he said it took him over 10 years because he was not in any particular hurry, and he wanted to really get it right. He wanted to do the research, and this book is moving the whole table. He wanted to, go and do the research and get it right and get the nuances right, the relationships between Alan Locke and different members of what we now call the Harlem Renaissance period, right? It's not like they were walking around calling themselves a Harlem Renaissance era or artist. So while you might know people like Langston Hughes and Zora Neale Hurston, Countee Cullen, a whole host of people. This was the Jazz Age, so all the jazz musicians. You might not know Alan Locke. And really, if it weren't for Alan Locke, we would not really have this thing called the Harlem Renaissance. And he, along with W.E.B. Du Bois, came up with this idea of the New Negro. And it's sort of in contradiction to what Zora was saying in terms of valuing the beauty of Black life, Black speech as it was, if it was, what we might say pidgin, or, slang, or ebonics. Zora is trying to tell the story of the folk in the way that the folk spoke and really lived. The idea of the New Negro is that Black people are moving away from those, and think about what time of period this is. So this is the early 1900s. when Black people are trying to move away from these stereotypical ideas of this Southern, uneducated, kind of backwards country bumpkin kind of life that when we were enslaved, and then shortly after that, but still living a agricultural rural life, and still largely uneducated, illiterate, and not being able to, travel or move around much. Well, Du Bois and Alan Locke came up with this idea, the term the new Negro, which said we're not the old, we are the new, we are the well-educated, we are the cosmopolitan ones, we are the ones who travel, we are the ones who are creating this beautiful art, and therefore, thereby changing the way the world thinks about Black people via the beauty of African art. That's a huge project that Alan Locke envisioned, and I am in awe, frankly, of him. I am in awe. I mean, he was a man with great foibles and eccentricities, and today we probably call him an elitist because he was all about, what's become known as bougie Blackness, I guess. We might say the new Negro was bougie Blackness. Think about W.E.B. Du Bois's idea of the talented 10th, that it was just going to be 10% of the Black population who were going to lead the rest of us, who were more highly educated and who could step into leadership. But anyway, Alan Locke was another great scholar. He was the first African American Rhodes Scholar. Again, a lot of this stuff gets rather academic, but y'all know that's what I do. And so I certainly admire his ability. Born in Philadelphia, like a regular Black person, right? But really pushed by his mother to do more and be more. And so he wanted to reshape the way the world thought about Black people via art, which again is an enormous challenge, and it's the scale, the vision of it is just enormous. So I really admire him for that. And I love the way Jeffrey Stewart wrote this book because I keep on, it's about 1,000 pages, y'all. I mean, I got all these notes in it. It really is a big old thing. But again, I love this book. It's so rich. I mean, I teach on the Harlem Renaissance, and so it's so rich because it really does help us see the relationships that he had with people like Langston Hughes and Zora Neale Hurston and Jean Toomer. And I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. If you Google Harlem Renaissance artists, I mean, you're going to get just tons and tons of people. And he was really the architect of the movement. Really, he was really a gatekeeper. As I said, he was very particular, very much an elitist, and he was a taskmaster about who got put on and who didn't. You got to do it his way. You can argue with it and critique all day long, but his vision was enormous, and his goal really was to promote Blackness, to promote the beauty of Black art. And because he had a particular vision, he was very persnickety about how to meet that vision. And so he was always challenging artists of that time to kind of do it his way. And if you didn't, you wouldn't be put on Front Street. You wouldn't get into the journals. You wouldn't get into the art galleries. You wouldn't get into the performance spaces. And so, yeah, he was a gatekeeper. And as I said, today people might not appreciate as much, but I do. I really do. And if you happen to be like me and you don't mind a big old book to read, I mean, people ask me about, well, how long, and the students, of course, ask, well, how long do we have to read the whole thing? I always say, well, do you know how to read? Yes, you do know how to read. So what difference does it make how long it is? Because if it means that, I can deal with a book this size, or I can deal with a book this size, okay. But guess what? If you went from reading this, and then you put this down, and then you got another one, and then you got another one after that, you would still end up at some point reading 1,000 pages. So what's the problem reading one book that's 1,000 pages? I understand. That's just me. Let's see. I guess that's all I'm gonna wrap it up, because again, the video's getting on in length, and this is part 2. So thank you for hanging in, and yeah, I hope you are enjoying this relish in Black History Month. I mean, we know that it can be kind of crazy that we have to have this month, and people try to fight us about having critical race theory in schools and all that. But we got to take advantage of it how and where we can, and use the time if you don't like how other people are using and abusing the name Black History Month, then make a decision for yourself how you're going to do it. Are there some young people in your life that you can introduce to some Black writers or Black filmmakers, or introduce them to Afrofuturism? Whatever it is, how can we continue, standing on our ancestors' shoulders? How can we continue honoring our legacy and promoting it and uplifting, our people? Like Alan Locke, he was in it, to promote our people no matter what. um, and it cost him in a number of ways too. So anyway, I'm going to wrap that up. Let me know what you think in the comments. Who have you been reading? What are some books that you recommend for me? Who are the authors you lift up? Yeah, and if you want me to go more into the Harlem Renaissance stuff, that would be a whole great series, although not necessarily what this channel is about. I do have another channel where we do talk more about literary stuff. But, those are also our people. Those are also our ancestors. And so if you want more on that from me, I can definitely bring you some more on that. So, all right, I'm going to wrap this up. Bye for now.